If our lives are to be healthy and our spirits are to grow, we need a dedication to the truth. This should be obvious, for truth is reality. Our view of reality is like a map. If the map is false and inaccurate, we generally will be lost. Gave me a chuckle as I was reading it, actually. I could feel a reverberation in my body because it's from The Road Less Traveled, Scott Peck, and it's the start of he names 4 things, but one of them is the dedication to reality. And as I was reading it, I was thinking about how oftentimes I was dedicated to anything but reality.
That's right. Me too.
The truth shall set you free. Well,
I'd rather be in a cage.
I'd rather be in a cage. and reading that, I suppose I was chuckling because it's so true. It sounds so like a lot of things, like the best things in life, they're so simple. And they're simple because they're true. And it doesn't mean, though, that the truth won't be painful, that it's not a hard pill to swallow. And having swallowed, so I was reflecting upon this in reality. It's like, why are these even 2 fellas here now talking about reality? And because it came off the back of last week, we were talking about shame. And I was reflecting upon this yesterday evening. We had spoken yesterday evening. And I was reflecting upon, I was just reflecting, say if I have something happening in my life that's very painful, I think our tendency is to avoid that. But say if what's happening in my life is maybe I've been made redundant. I've been made redundant and, my career has been everything to me and it's really painful. I definitely know a lot of us can bury our head in the sand and say, oh, well, and create even a whole narrative, even when it's happened. And I was thinking of Joan Didion's book, the writer from the States, The Year of Magical Thinking. And when I was thinking about how good we're at avoiding pain, she was writing about grief. And she said, I understood that John had died. I looked at his shoes. I understood more or less that he wouldn't be wearing them again. But in the year of magical thinking, there was a kind of magicalness to her thinking. And so somewhere in her recesses, it's almost like, well, I won't get rid of the shoes because you wouldn't know when he might need them again. Even though he had died on our very floor. And there's a line in it where she says, grief turns out to be a place that none of us know until we reach it. And I taught the truth of that. And if I can accept that truth, reality, if I can be supported to meet reality, it'll be okay.
Like a threshold.
Yeah.
So postponing the leaning into the reality of it.
Yeah.
Also postponing of grief, and the grief is of course, but it can be it's a cathartic process.
Yeah.
Long or short, it's different for everyone. But the resistance of it actually prolongs the suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so often we're reading from the wrong maps.
Yeah.
And when you were saying earlier, I was sitting with somebody else and I had it so clear, and it made me chuckle because I often have it very clear for other people, extremely clear. And then I'm sad that the moment is over where I'm not listening to somebody else, but I've got to sort myself out. And it's major, it's mayhem.
Yeah.
Right.
It's mayhem.
And if it's not simple, there's something we're missing a trick. If it's not simple, there's alibis, there's excuses, trying to not enter into something because the reality is often pretty straightforward.
And I wonder, yeah, like the resistance, the reality being straightforward, it's easier to sit and listen to somebody else. But so I have a map, I understand my life to be a certain way, and I have this map and I have these schema developed. And then somebody throws in a little bit of not too much of a grenade, but I'm saying, well, actually, I think you'll find that, and then I've got to rearrange something inside myself. That reality, I wonder, is all the time trying to rearrange us, to orientate to the reality of who we are, to be in the reality, to participate in the reality, to receive from the reality, including the reality of who I am. And I suppose, like you were saying, like that threshold experience, Jake, that if I can be supported to enter into it, if I can let go of the resistance, if I can, oh yeah, that to see, I'm just sensing in this moment about the invitation, the embrace of reality. And I'm very conscious as I look at crucifix on the wall, from Ground Zero, the picture, kind of pretty famous picture from Ground Zero, on the eve of, in the Christian tradition, of Jesus being sentenced to death. And how he met that reality and how he engaged in the reality of his suffering.
For us.
So I really like what somebody says, he says to us, pick up your cross and follow me. Yeah, that's all very fine until you see where he's actually bringing you to, your own personal Calvary. No wonder we resist, because it can be painful. It can be painful to reconcile ourselves to the circumstances of our life, to how they're shaping us and putting nails into our hands and our feet.
In the hypothetical situation, we're all going to do that. We're all brave sisters and brothers, aren't we? When we listen to the story of the Passion, like, I know, but I'd be saying, I know this man, until the cock crows and you know that you are Peter, and you are Judas. Yes,
right.
And we're all at the table. And when somebody challenges you with the question, would you do that? If it's clean, your compass is not doesn't need any support in settling itself when it gets a knock. But when it's not clean, it needs a lot of words to pretend that that compass is still pointing in the right direction.
Like, I'm thinking, Joan, I never was really good at reading maps, but before we got Google Maps and all of those things, but like maybe people are in cars and you would see this sometimes, they say, but the map says it should be here, but it's not here. Like we think it should be this way, and it's not this way. I think about reality is, a phrase I use a lot, which I heard from a teacher of mine, is meeting life on life's terms, which are always absolute. The acceptance which lies beyond the ego, the stages of grief, denial, all the, depression, anger, bargaining, acceptance. The acceptance of my reality, of my situation, of my gifts. How many of us refuse the gifts and confuse the behavior with something about the reality of who we are? And then, put ourselves in a small cage, thinking about the ego, that's always like, it's how am I sounding? How am I looking? I like that. I don't like this. Go away. What does somebody say? The ego operates in a couple of ways, the unhealthy ego. Come here, go away, I'm not interested. Whereas reality is something very different. And I believe it's always opening us up, isn't it?
It's, we were talking about effortlessness, right? Reality doesn't try very hard because it doesn't have to.
No.
But we're trying very hard to make reality be something that we'd like it to be. And it becomes painful. And then the release of truth, absolute truth, reality to come out, is a physical sensation, right? And when I'm struggling with something and the reality is somehow I can make contact with it, it's usually a relief.
Mm-hmm.
Relief, release.
Yeah.
I was in a conversation with a friend last week, and we had misunderstood each other for quite a while. It had been very upsetting for the other person. And when it became clear that it was different, and that he was able to admit how difficult that had been, or the truth of the misunderstanding, there was also some truth. But just to admit that that was upsetting, something I was completely unaware of, but he hadn't wanted to say it for fear of conflict, which had just, the rotting fish just continued to fester. And when we put it on the table, he literally said, I can't tell you how relieved I am. And we hadn't even discussed the topic. We just put it on the table.
Mm.
Here it is. That's what's difficult for you and is for me just how it is. It means nothing to me, but it's difficult for you. And it's important to me to know that it's difficult. And the release, and you could see the body like being, I don't even need to fix this anymore. Just the fact that I've admitted to you that it's really upset me is already enough. Right? Meeting reality. It's not easy for me. Okay.
Yeah. And isn't that like just the listening to you, Jake, about that? How many times in our lives that, with another, with ourselves, we're just simply the naming of reality. And this is difficult. I feel whatever, I feel lonely. And sometimes, I remember an experience one time I was sharing something with someone and they came in very quickly to, they were kind of make it okay for me. And I said, no, I'm okay. I actually am okay with that reality. It's just being able to voice it, isn't it? Like when we sit with people or people in their lives, I'm sure listeners will appreciate this. And, something's difficult or something's painful in some ways. And, it wasn't too bad, and, et cetera, et cetera. And, and you're looking at them, but your face is communicating a whole different reality. I'm thinking about, I supervised, over the years, I used to be engaged, social work training. And so sometimes students would be in placement and sometimes I'd go and visit them. And I really enjoyed it for the most part. And I sat with somebody one time, I was doing some supervision with them, and they didn't really like who I was the sense I got every time I sat with them. And it was difficult because I'm a human being. And I felt that there was stuff being projected onto me that wasn't mine. I represented somebody for them. Like, they were very talented as a social worker in training. They had skills that I didn't have. And I felt like their area for development was around being able to meet people like me who are less interested in the practical. It's not that it doesn't occupy a place because it's important in social. That we're interested in what was going on in the inner world. So we'd always start supervision with a piece of silence, mindfulness. And I would say to the individual, how are you? And this is, without fail, this is what would come back. Yeah, grand. No, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to discern that while you're saying grand. So I would say to them, I appreciate the words. I hear them that are coming out of your mouth. And I'm just inviting you to pay attention to what's going on in your body and what do you hear in your tone of voice. You know? And because I think if we don't work out that knot, like you did with your friend, then the kind of energy gets stuck. And it's like, no, I'm grand. It's like saying to somebody, yeah, great. Me, I'm not great. Oh.
I refuse to be compassionate with myself. Even if you, especially when you invite me to do so. I'm fine. I'm fine. Stop. I'm fine.
Yeah. Because how could you be fine sometimes in the face of what is happening? Mm-hmm. Or maybe even the judgment that says, this reality is so difficult, but I can't acknowledge the fact that I feel vulnerable about it, or this feels somewhere in my mind, I've made it so that this doesn't merit me feeling the way I do. I shouldn't be feeling this way. I don't know about you, Jay, but I'd say in your work, you must often hear something like that. I'm sure listeners hear themselves saying that, certainly say that, like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. So then I'm going to make a judgment on the reality of my feelings. No, my feelings are like my thoughts, sensations. They're only indications of something. They're not the complete reality. It's like, and you are feeling this way. Mm. In this moment, I'm thinking, I must remember this the next time I'm feeling a particular way. Because I think we lose that capacity, don't we?
Mm. I was also, thinking about if you're in a job where it's common practice to have supervision, if you're starting with I'm grand, it's a bit of a giveaway in the sense that the best response, if you can't name it, is to say that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Because in social work, it must be a challenging job.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
And the reality is also, I don't like you.
Yes. I don't like what you represent or who I perceive you to be, or there's something very honest about that. And kind of thinking about like even reality being able to name the ground that I'm on. Because if I can't name the ground I'm on, I'm not seeing clearly. So then I'm making choices. I have a map that's next to useless to me. I mean, I should be in Liverpool right now. I'm in Sheffield.
Yeah. Yeah, and that quote about contemplation, the long, loving look at the real. Father William McNamara.
That's right. Yeah.
You said, the loving struck me, because also in that conversation with somebody, when I'm being triggered by you, but the loving response would be to be honest, right? To say, there seems to be a struggle between what you represent and where I am. Now, maybe that I can't always do that myself, but I mean, the loving is to also step over yourself and saying, what is love asking of me now? Yes, if it has to be a loving look at the real, what is love asking me to do?
Yeah. Like that question, what is love asking me to do to meet something that feels undigestible, to be compassionate, to be tender, to be firm. Yeah.
How did the relationship with the individual develop?
Shocking. Yeah, shocking. Never went anywhere. Yeah, it was, and I know I had my part in that. And I hope wherever they are now that they're doing great. But the question I shared with them, and I'm asking myself in this moment, and then I say, well, that's not true. I was going to ask myself, are you defending yourself? Are you presenting and that's not what's happening. I said to them, look, it feels to me like I represent somebody for you, and because I was trying to do some teaching around transference, counter-transference, projections. And I said, look, it would be helpful to figure out who that is. And by all means, use this relationship to figure that out. And don't forget I'm Noel. Don't forget I'm Noel. Because that's what was difficult to be on there was a consistency to what felt like I was meeting. So, yeah. And I was really offered something because I needed to sit with someone where, the reality was it wasn't always comfortable.
Yeah, it gets complicated quickly in my mind. Transference and counter-transference.
Yeah.
Where how it's difficult to
figure out what's mine, what's his, in other words.
Yeah.
Vice versa, and so like when I think about freedom and like the long loving look at the real, and like it's all like, so I read it in a page, we've been reading Justice, we both have a copy of that from Richard Rohr. It's like, oh, this is, and you read it or you're in a room, as you said, Jake, and it's feeling, oh yeah, God, I had it clear, but it can get, the clarity can be quickly replaced by the fog.
Yeah. Lovely little book, by the way, worth buying. A little daily reflections book, Just This by Richard Rohr. Couple of pages a day. Yeah.
Because it gets foggy and the smoke, doesn't it? So like why we all benefit of reality, so we avoid reality because it's painful. What helps us to meet reality? Good friendship, good conversation, watching something, listening, also contemplation. Because it has a way of wiping my mirror as cleaning the lenses.
Yeah. And perhaps that's also difficult, right? Contemplation in that sense, because of before surrender, there's awe. Is that right? That's right. How it seems to me, right? So, and when I sit still with the truth of me, and it becomes clear that I actually feel awful, and I don't know what to do, those are the facts. Right. Now, there are some reasons why this is so. Many people have done things wrong, all to me. That's why the world is such a horrible place, right? And that's all surely makes for great books and stories, but it's not real. The reality is that I feel pretty awful, and I don't know why. These are two facts that I can compute when I sit sometimes, right? But it's a bit of an admission, isn't it? And now what? No idea. Yeah. Wow. Doesn't even get better. There's not even any relief in this one, right? And to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that why, as you said, I have no idea why. Maybe oftentimes we'd hear when it's hear ourselves, listeners, I have no idea why. Like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And sometimes we would say, but even if you knew why, would it change how you were feeling? No. Like, if we're really honest, no. So then, as you said, the invitation is, and when we're present to reality, what does this moment ask of me? That if I've been used to relating with myself in a particular way, that maybe is a little bit harsh or blunted, or, like last week we were saying about, some shame around vulnerability, etc. We're going to be a work in progress. It'll be helpful for us to find a way of, this is my reality. I feel some difficult feelings, and it's okay. That lovely word, and. almost as if the end were a hammock for the hurt.
Mm.
That is like, yes, and I'm okay. There's beautiful. I love those moments with people where they'll come in and they're sitting at something and they're saying, if this was 2 years ago, and if this was 6 months ago, I don't know if I'd have managed this. So even though I'm feeling all that I'm feeling, and it's okay. I'd like this wasn't like this. I'm not going to expend my energy in trying to create a new reality, trying to bring the situation around so it's more palatable to my idea of how reality should look. So we accept.
Yeah, the road doesn't end, right?
No.
But you are allowed to buy more comfortable shoes.
That's right.
And yeah, it's how we relate to the reality that we have a choice. We do have a choice in that. And it is uncomfortable not to know the answers. But it makes a whole. I was having a meeting with a client earlier today, and they were saying things I didn't know what to say. I thought I have no idea what this is. How are you feeling right now? Confused. So if you want to get me confused, say that, because what am I supposed to do with that? At least other people might have great navigation. I just said all I can do is that I don't know what to do now. Luckily, this person had a lot to say, so I just started to stay with her and not try to make it my narrative or my desire to come to something concrete or a fork in the road, right? Because I wanted to get away from this confusion bit, and there's a big temptation, right? Or my desires for this person's life, and base my questions on my desires instead of what. This is awful. Who's this hack? Yeah, I know.
I just love the honesty of it. It makes me laugh because I recognize in myself where I have, rather than participate in the reality, I've participated in, like, Noel has gotten into the driving seat because apparently I have a better idea where reality, the town reality lives.
Yeah. Look, I bought a new map for you. I don't know much about your life, but this is the better map. What? But it is kind of like, because when you slow down and when you make things simple, nobody I ever sit with is asking me for a solution. So what is it in me that kind of has this, I can usually bring it to the surface sometimes. I don't know when I can't, because I probably wasn't conscious in the moments that I couldn't, but I feel this jerk, like, I need to do something. And the fact, of course, is that you need to be present. And then we come to this piece of the reality that is now, right? It's just now.
Yeah. It's always now, always here.
Now. Yeah.
Never anywhere else. This is, and I suppose that's why the language isn't out of the interior life and reality, words like reality, or like opening them up a little bit. Sometimes I think I've got a grasp on it, and like we were saying, well, what does reality mean? It's why it makes me chuckle so much when I have heard, and you hear people say the reality is. The reality.
What's your first thought when you hear that?
I kind of go, whose reality? So because the thinking that got me here, the map I was following to get me here, is well and truly outdated and outmoded. So like the solutions, and because they are complexities, like life can feel complex in making decisions, and I'd often hear it in politics. But reality is, and people try to sell us a narrative, and who's got the best narrative, who's got the most appealing reality. Meanwhile, the reality is that people are really starving, people are really suffering, there's a lot of injustice, there's a lot of good work, there's everything in between, And how am I resourced inside myself to be open to the reality, to see things as they are, as Rohr says, not to see them as I am. Because if I see them as I am, if somebody, like I'm talking about social work students, there's a social work student that the blessing of being in a class with, and one time she got her PhD this past week, big achievement, and she was looking at the experiences of Black social workers in Ireland, and I wish, which I think is a really good thing, because who better to look at that experience than somebody who has that experience? But also I was sharing in a small message, I know as a white man, that's the lens in which, the world is saturated with that reality, and that's not reality. So I need something to look at that reality. And I was just sharing that one of the things I found very helpful, and something I had got to engage in over 2 years, was exploring whiteness. Because it completely colors how I listen and how I hear. And that's humbling, and brings me into a much clearer sense of reality. Because I kind of feel, isn't it, like we say, well, what's the ground we're on? Like I often feel like, what ground is here? What is it that I'm experiencing? And if there's not, that's quite something to try and figure out, because the first thing I need to know is the ground. So when I hear the reality is, I'm saying, I'm not sure that you're seeing quite the ground. In the same way as I don't see the ground of how racism continues to be perpetuated, because I'm complicit in that at some level, because I benefit from that. Even though
and you never have to experience it.
And I never have to experience it. And as I feel that right now, as I say that, I feel appropriately humbled in my body. And so if I can listen to other people who have experiences of poverty, of discrimination, or of being scapegoated, or I'm much more likely to have at least some access, some doorway into reality.
I was reading, as we both are, on the Enneagram. This has been going on for at least 10 years now. It's a slow process. And in one of the chapters, it says, if you think you found your Enneagram type, and you don't feel utterly humiliated and ashamed, rest assured, you have not found your Enneagram type. Right. And I thought, oh, I have found it.
Yeah. Because
it was awful. And so the reality, and of course there's a lot of beauty to reality as well, but it's a good measurement, right? When somebody is like, we want to say things to make it untrue, there's probably a lot of truth to it. Right. And all of these Enneagram types have things that are good, but also things that are awful. And sometimes we want to talk them into good, cool stuff. Like, yeah, that's really me. Yeah, but that's not great. It's not great to be like that. Oh, right. Or, I said to my wife, I don't recognize myself in this profile at all. Oh, do you want an example from last week, last month, last year, year before, 10 years ago? And she gave some.
Yeah.
And it had been me who did that. There was no confusion as to the identity of the perpetrator. Just behavior. Yeah. That's not always helpful for both the person who is enacting them as the recipients of that behavior. Yeah. Painful, excruciating reality. Yeah. But the sooner you can start wrestling with it and embrace it and cut yourself some slack while you stare at the clown in the mirror, is the invitation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, that part of, again, embracing reality where we weep and we laugh. I think they say that about the Enneagram as well, don't they? And I don't know, Jake, because I mean, I was thinking about this last week and I was saying, oh, I had said it was Oscar Ochezo, but I actually think it was another man, wasn't it? Oscar Ochezo was the Bolivian mystic who kind of introduced it to Narango, the psychiatrist. But in the interest of, like, for me, so what I'm working with in the Enneagram, I believe, is number 4, the need to feel special.
And you are special, no?
You know? And when I read it and I look down at the things, I see a whole list of behaviors that I would have historically rather not have acknowledged. And then in embracing it, it's like, yeah. Because curiously, one of the things in a 4, if a 4 is indeed somebody else, friends of mine are listening, you know, people who know me, said, I don't know that he's a 4, you know what I mean? Maybe, anyway, we're just playing around with this. And is balance, equanimity, which is kind of interesting, which resonates at a certain level. Yeah. And so you read these things, you share with some friends, and and you know, you kind of recognize everybody's got a particular type. Nobody's better or worse than anybody else.
It's your privilege and your cross.
Yeah.
And it comes also to me the importance of a safe space. Right, so you and I have been able to talk about our numbers because it requires some self-disclosure and some mirroring. That can only come out when you feel safe, so you can cry and laugh and really enter in. And I've also proffered some of these descriptions to some of my clients when you deem the space safe enough. It's not in the first month of engagement, shall we say. But when you have when the contract is good, the psychological contract and the safety is good, say, could I read a couple of things to you and see, you know, you just nod when you see the mouth drop and say, where did you find this? Yeah, you recognize it. Oh, yes, completely. But it's also, you see real relief, like, because you're recognized. If there's a description of a personality that matches you, there's also like, wow, you know, I'm normal. There are other people like me. This is a human phenomenon. I am a real human phenomenon that is, I'm not supposed to feel like that. No, you are.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to feel. No, you are.
It's a preference, isn't it? It's a particular way of relating and the habits, and then because the habits, as you said, Jake, they're painful for us, they're painful for others, also as importantly. And then that's not freedom and reality reconciling. Says, oh yeah, that's I don't want to acknowledge that, the need to feel special, or it's like, so as you said, sure, that's the truth of all of us. Sure, we're all blessed with, it's the fact of our humanness, the very fact that we're here, that we're living and breathing. There's nothing that any of us could ever do would add 1 ounce of work to the work that is already here in the weightedness of our bodies and who we are. It's no PhDs, no cars, no houses, no clothes, no remembering of whatever. But the truth is to remember I believe who you really are. So what I love that Buddha saying, I often use this, what was the shape of your face before your grandparents were born? The Buddha's koan. What was the shape of your face before your grandparents were born? Like, what? It's designed to do your head in. Because the head does not have a handle on reality. If you listen to the narratives, don't we, of ourselves or others, and the things that they say about themselves that are just not true. My clearest example of that was I worked in an organization at one stage. I learned a lot about myself in this organization and a lot about people. And because I was the only person doing a particular role in that organization, so everybody could come to me, about 1,200 staff. People would come into the room and they'd talk about somebody that they found really, really difficult. And I'd be listening to them. And then maybe 6 months later, 2 months later, maybe a year later, the person that they were talking about would come for counseling. And the person that I heard described, there was no correlation. It was clear that they were the same person because, you know, small organization. There was no correlation. And yet in the mind of and the experience of someone. And I think that's what's so fascinating even about ourselves, isn't it? Like the reality of, you know, the reality is about myself. Maybe we don't have maybe the heart isn't opened enough. And the mind, like what does Rohr talk about? You got to keep 3 spaces open. You know, the heart has got to be open, the mind has got to be open, and the body's got to be open. And then we're more able to perceive and experience things in their isness or thisness. Is thisness? I can't remember who says that, but it's
again, I thought business. Yeah. So much time wasted, right, with the false narratives about ourselves, other people, the desire to be seen is great as a thing to acknowledge, right? And for non-attachment, of course, you want to get over that desire, because if you don't need to be seen, it's great. But I think the first part of the journey is the desire to be seen, and it feels good to be seen.
Yeah.
It's good to me. I'd like to be less attached to it.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't think there's any skipping and we because we would like to keep our dignity intact. It's not possible. You know, first fail miserably, pick yourself up, and keep going, and know that you're not alone.
Yeah. Thinking about, you know, keeping your dignity intact, because the humiliation, you know, again, falling on from last week, that thread, or the humility is as a way of bringing us to our knees and also recognize it's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
You know, you're okay. Reality, as we were saying in the about, isn't it? A new phrase we came up for. The reality is more than generous. Yeah, sure, it can be painful. A 4, for example, in the Enneagram will avoid the present moment a lot at all costs. If something about the present moment is unbearable. But then you come to know that the present moment, like the present moment being here with you, sitting with people earlier on. I mean, what a gift. What a gift. Oh, here comes another one. Here's another one.
He keeps on giving.
Yeah.
And it's also, for me, it's really a mantra that it feels like patting my dog. It's okay.
Yeah.
Patting my dog settles me. And I don't know what it's like for the dog. I hope too.
Yeah. Maybe the dog is saying, I really wish he'd sort out his number, you know?
Doesn't he know he's a 1? Yeah. Well, I think we'll be revisiting reality at some point, probably in an engagement with somebody we're looking to interview. More on that later. Yeah. But for now, happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Yeah, happy Easter. And yeah, may you be embraced and supported to meet the realities, whatever the realities are in your life right now, and to know you're not alone.
You have been listening to The Hinge, a podcast presented by Noel O'Driscoll and Jake Esman, produced by Jer Kellett. Feel free to contact the show in the comments or by emailing us at thehingepodcast@gmail.com. Join us next week for another episode of The Hinge.